roles. Within full stack roles, we have front end, back end, and there's a whole lot of other stuff, which for right now we'll just categorize into others, which includes things like cloud engineering or big data or DevOps or things like those. Now, a few years back, it was website generators like sites like bubble.io or Wix. So if a software can make a web application, then would we even need a web application developer or not? So that is another question that has been coming through the ages. Trade-offs that have gone in implementing these two frameworks. For instance, Angular is very, very opinionated. Angular tells you how to do each and everything. Angular is like that possessive boyfriend who wants to make sure that, he is in charge of every aspect of his girlfriend's life. So that is something that Angular is. In contrast to that, React is a sort of a chill person. React will make sure. I am Dushyant Pathak, and the agenda for today's webinar will be based around how to clear technical interviews for entry-level roles. So at any point during the webinar, if you think my voice is breaking or if there is an issue on my screen, please do let me know on the chat so that I can rectify it at the earliest. The agenda that we're going to be covering in today's session, we'll quickly discuss first the industry trends. So there are a lot of areas in which you can focus on towards in terms of the roles, and with the advent of ChatGPT, the questions would also have migrated from whether or not this is a good role, if this is something good to do, to if this role is going to be relevant in the future, because we hear a lot of things from friends and families that website development might not be that relevant anymore. DSA interviews might be a thing of the past, and a lot of such WhatsApp university statements abound all through us as soon as ChatGPT has shown its mark. So we'll quickly discuss on some of the industry trends that are relevant right now. We'll then go to the technical skills that are required for you to ace interviews and to make sure that you do well in interviews. Then we'll be talking about problem solving. What exactly are the problems that interviews are expected to hone, or interviews are expected to test rather. Then we'll quickly cover communication skills. That communication is a very wide term. How good can you be a communicator? Do you have to have complete precise knowledge of the English language, or just normal conversational language works? And finally, we'll be covering the interview prep, about how you can go prepping for any role that you desire. So to start off, number one is just give me one sec. Yeah. So industry trends, there are a lot of different roles that abound in the industry, but given that this is a webinar that is focused towards entry level roles, we'll be focusing on some of the major ones. The first categorization is full stack roles. Second is roles pertaining to data analysis, data science, or machine learning. And finally, there are some tool specific roles. Within full stack roles, we have front end, back end, and there's a whole lot of other stuff, which for right now we'll just categorize into others, which includes things like cloud engineering or big data or DevOps or things like those. Front end means the look and feel of web applications, how a web application or how a mobile application interacts with a client or people like us. So for front end, the most common frameworks that are used are JavaScript frameworks like React, Angular. Very few websites are still made using simple HTML, HTML, CSS, and CSS frameworks such as Bootstrap, but that is slowly paving way into these JavaScript based frameworks because they simplify a lot of things. So that is front end. Back end includes Java. Spring is the most common, most popular choice for backend technologies. Python using Django or similar other frameworks is slowly catching up to be another equal good option as well, be it Django or Flask and so on. And finally, Node.js is yet another choice. Node.js is usually preferred by developers who are focusing on the core JavaScript tech stack, because usually it is recommended that people who are, a JavaScript developer who can write React well, it is understood that she or he will also be able to be fast and catching up well with Node.js. And finally, the third set is cloud. So cloud is something that has come into action over the past 6 7 years. Cloud engineering means managing and provisioning cloud infrastructure, running and configuring our applications to run on the cloud. So when we talk about cloud, we mean things like AWS, Amazon Web Services, GCP, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, and so on. There are a few other options as well, which are less known, such as Linode or DigitalOcean, and so on. So, how do we host our applications? How do we configure our complex applications to run on the cloud? How do we make sure that a lot of services that are going back and forth are able to function on a remote server, which we are not sitting at? So, that all of that comes into cloud engineering. How do we make sure that our servers are built to handle a lot of heavy duty tasks? For instance, you might have heard that when IPL or one of these India matches was screening, uh, there were a lot of issues with Geo Cinema or Geo TV when FIFA was screening. So in all of those cases, how well equipped are the engineers and how well equipped is the cloud infrastructure to take on those additional roles? That is something that is being handled by cloud engineering roles. Big data is another option. Big data includes things like Hadoop, Apache Spark, Kafka, and so on. So when we have huge chunks of data, how do we process it and how do we make it accessible for analysis and for use? So that is again another entirely different ball game. And we have things like DevOps. So DevOps includes things like configuring Jenkins, configuring team cities, ensuring that once our code is developed, it is taken from developed stage or from a developer's local machine. It is tested either first in isolation, then in integration, then it goes through various levels of progressive environment testing. Then it is finally merged into a common code base. Then it goes live to production in front of the users. So that is DevOps. Data analysis, data science roles, this is something that used to be a very in thing until the past 2 3 years. So data science, the most common language that is used for data science and machine learning is Python. R is another option, and there is a lot of knowledge of machine learning that we have to have knowledge of what are the ML algorithms, what are the standard models that are used, what is natural language processing, what is image processing, and so on. So that is another entirely different field in which you can explore. Then there are tool specific roles. This is something that is not very commonly known to people in our generation. So for right now, for instance, Salesforce is a tool that is a CRM tool that stands for customer relationship management. So you can build on top of the Salesforce tool to customize solutions to a lot of different companies. So if you Google out what Salesforce does, you'll get an idea. Similarly, BPM, that is Business Process Monitoring by IBM, is another such tool that allows us to customize workflows for different users. So this is something that is not as prevalent right now as it used to be about 10 years back, but this is something that still exists. So you can be called a Salesforce developer or you can be called a BPM developer. And this has to be, I think, the most, asked about slide in today's video. So given the advent of ChatGPT and GPT-3 and Google Bard and everything, what difference is it going to make in the roles? That is something that would be a question on the minds of just about everyone. That are we in line to lose our jobs because the code that we can write, ChatGPT can write that code much faster and practically at a much lower cost than you would pay a developer? So that is a question that we're going to be discussing. Similarly, ChatGPT is now, a few years back, it was website generators like sites like bubble.io or Wix. So if a software can make a web application, then would we even need a web application developer or not? So that is another question that has been coming through the ages. And finally, Web3 and blockchain. So blockchain gained a lot of prominence during the COVID phase because at that time Elon Musk was high and so was the hype around blockchain. And that is when people were pretty explorative about what are the opportunities that blockchain development could provide. Since then it has slightly crescended. Since Bitcoin has fallen and so has all the hype around cryptocurrency, it still exists. Web3 is a concept that is associated with the development of blockchain and Bitcoin, there is this whole concept of decentralization that comes in. This concept is entirely different from the normal conventional development that you have to follow. So I'll talk about it in detail, but folks, do make sure that if you're entering into the Web3 blockchain space, please do make sure that a lot of those skills that you develop through Web3 might not be very relevant to other conventional full stack roles that we have discussed thus far. To talk about the question that is ChatGPT gonna take away a lot of our jobs, the answer is ChatGPT is gonna simplify a lot of workflows that were being done monotonously. Let me repeat that once again. ChatGPT is gonna simplify a lot of roles that were being done monotonously. I see an unstable connection error on my screen. If I am audible, please do let me know on the chat, or I'll switch my network so that it does not break. Okay, thank you for confirming. Right. So when I say that it will take away monotonous things, so Chat GPT, after all, is an AI. It is a program. It is something that has been developed by the computer. It is limited to solve problems that it has already seen before and building upon it. At the end, to figure out new ways and innovative ways of doing things, that is something that a human can do. That is not something that an AI will be able to do as well as a human. So, for instance, you might wonder that if I ask ChatGPT to write out, let's say, a review for a particular application or a particular software, that is something that ChatGPT will be able to do well enough based on the information, the inputs, and the parameters that it has received already. But can it innovate? Can it think outside the box? Can it provide a pointer that was not there so far? That is something that a human can think of and imagine. Can ChatGPT do that? The answer is no. Similarly, for roles that require complex problem solving, which has a lot of ponderable factors, when we are in the software industry, we are juggling through a lot of factors that we have to handle the users, we have to handle our bosses, we have to handle how fast and how well we are able to deliver. In all of those cases, ChatGPT would prove inefficient in its present stage. So, for right now, a lot of the mundane tasks that require repetitive work, that is something that ChatGPT can easily do. Filling up Excel sheets or writing boilerplate HTML code is something that ChatGPT can do very well, very fast. Solving standard data structures and algorithms problems that it has already seen before, that is something that ChatGPT can do very well. But ChatGPT cannot solve the problem of developing software applications at scale. ChatGPT cannot develop architectures for different software. ChatGPT cannot take a problem statement and provide a complete holistic enterprise architecture solution. For instance, I work at a company that is known as Deutsche Bank. We are supposed to provide financial solutions to our clients. Now, if I were to tell my users that, if my users were to tell me rather, that these are the pointers that we have, and we expect you to come up with an enterprise architecture solution as to how this will be solved using code, that is something that architects in my team can do. That is something that we as human developers can do, because we can think of all those possibilities and we can collate it in together. That is not something that ChatGPT will be able to do. So the point being that while ChatGPT can take up a lot of the mundane tasks, a lot of repetitive tasks, our roles are safe as long as we continue to innovate in our roles, as long as we solve problems that are new, as long as we do something that has not already been done before. So whenever you interview, whenever you are looking for roles, and whenever you are applying for roles, you have to make sure that you portray how you are different, how you would solve the same problem in a different way. Tomorrow, if I were to interview for Google, then I would tell them that I would implement the logic behind the BARD algorithm in a different way. That is not something that ChatGPT or BARD itself would be able to solve. So this is how we stand firm, stand resolute in the midst of this whole this whole chorus of AI taking over the world. So that was about industry trends. Next, coming to technical skills. So when I say technical, I mean role specific skills. So what skills would you be required if you were to apply for a front end role? So the very critical skills that are required that you can not absolutely do without are HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and the knowledge, working knowledge rather, of any one framework like React, Angular, or Vue. These three are the most popular and standard frameworks that are used throughout the industry, and the knowledge of at least one of these is extremely important for you to have. If you do not have this knowledge, then it's going to be very tough for you to crack in entry level roles in front end. And in addition to that, a few things that would be good to have are experience across two frameworks. When I say two frameworks, I mean that if you have worked on React, if React is your primary tech stack, but if you also have some advantage of Angular, then that means that you will get a knowledge of how these two things are different. That means you will get a knowledge of the design trade-offs that have gone in implementing these two frameworks. For instance, Angular is very, very opinionated. Angular tells you how to do each and everything. Angular is like that possessive boyfriend who wants to make sure that, you know, he is in charge of every aspect of his girlfriend's life. So that is something that Angular is. In contrast to that, React is a sort of a chill person. React will make sure that it has these list of options, it has these possibilities that you can implement. How you go about it is something that would be entirely up to you. All right. And in addition to that, knowledge of concepts like optimization, how we optimize our web applications, SSR, that stands for server side rendering. So these are ways in which web applications can be optimized. So remember, when I made the comment about ChatGPT, the idea was that we have to innovate. We have to do something that a computer or an AI cannot do. So in those cases, how you innovate, how you make our web applications faster is something that would be very critical for you in a front end role. Backend roles, critical would be the knowledge of any one of these tech stacks. So I mentioned Java, Python, Node.js. These are the three most common ones. You should be able to write APIs. API stands for Application Programming Interfaces. So backend and frontend communicate using an API. So if you are able to write APIs in that particular language, if you are able to write APIs using Spring Boot, if you are able to, if your front end is able to fetch data using that API, if your front end is able to post some data using that API, if you are able to connect to a database using that backend framework, this sort of knowledge is extremely critical for you to know as a backend developer. Good to have concepts are the knowledge of design patterns. Design pattern is a standard way of solving a problem. So for instance, if you have to implement a particular class in Java, how you go about it is something that comes under the umbrella of design patterns, because this is a problem that has already been solved before. ये चीज पहले हो चुकी है. So that means how well you are able to take that standard approach and implement it in your own code is something that is solved by a design pattern. Solid principles, if you just Google it out, there are 5 different concepts that are usually the standard when you're trying to solve a backend engineering problem. And a few different advanced concepts such as multi-threading in Java and related, those are something that would be really good for you to know as a backend developer.